It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. It seems that my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. As proof, he didn't even try to ask about our current situation. Ah, right. I should introduce you to my current wife. This is Julia. He introduced his new spouse to me. What was he thinking? Ah, is that all? Are we done here? Bye then. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my way again. Hey. Are you jealous because we look happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. I was so angry that I felt sick. As I remained silent, he was about to say something more, but Steve interrupted him. Mom, why don't you fire this old man? What? My name is Kim. I am now 42 years old. I married Michael, a colleague from the same company, when I was 26. I continued to work after our marriage, but I quit my job when I got pregnant. Afterward, our son Steve was born. Once he turned 7 and started elementary school, child-rearing became a bit easier. Thinking it might be good to start working outside again, I discussed it with my husband. It seemed he had been waiting for this, as he agreed immediately. He probably thought it would help with our finances. But he began rushing me while I was job hunting. Did you find a job yet? No. Are you even looking properly? Any job will do, right? He seemed really eager for me to work. Moreover, while I was looking for a part-time job, he suggested, if you're going to work, isn't it better to work full-time? Even if not every day, how about 3 days a week for 8 hours each? Working too long would take me out of your dependent coverage, you know? Just because Steve is in elementary school doesn't mean he doesn't need any attention. I get home early, after all. However, Michael suggested that since I could put Steve in after-school care, working full-time 5 days a week would be better if being a dependent is a loss. He really seemed to want me to work long hours. I had said I wanted to work, so I couldn't argue much. But I was anxious since I hadn't worked for many years. Even if I decided to work full-time, I wanted to gradually get used to it. Quitting because it's too hard after starting wouldn't feel right. For now, I decided to start with a part-time job of about 20 hours a week, assuming I would work full-time eventually. Michael was complaining that I should start full-time right away. But when I said I would consider it if my health allowed, he reluctantly agreed. I never thought he was so concerned about our finances. Honestly, I found my husband's interference in job hunting annoying, yet I was also pleased. It's better to live long-term with someone who thinks about finances to some extent, rather than someone who is indifferent. However, I would later realize that this perception was wrong. One day, a few months after I started the part-time job, I received a message on my smartphone. Wondering who it could be, I checked and saw a name I hadn't seen in a long time. It was my former colleague and currently a colleague of my husband. It had been a while, so I casually read the message. But what it said shocked me so much that I exclaimed aloud. What? What does this mean? You must be joking. Long time no see. I saw your husband the other day, and he seemed really close to some woman. I thought it might be an affair, so I sent you this message. The message was informing me of my husband's affair, and it even included a photo. My heart was shaken. The photo clearly showed my husband, and he was arm in arm with a woman I didn't know. Of course, even if I knew her, being arm in arm would still be unacceptable. As I was shocked by the photo, another message came in. This woman is actually the daughter of the department head. She's also an employee of our company, so she definitely knows your husband is married. They're really bold, aren't they? I wonder if this is just how kids are these days. From my colleague's message, it was clear she was enjoying this gossip. But I replied with a thank you and closed the messaging app. I had never imagined my husband was having an affair. However, thinking back, there were many signs. Especially since he had been pushing me to work more at a time, when childrearing was not yet stable. Today, my husband was supposed to be on an overnight business trip. Probably, it was a lie to meet his affair partner leisurely. The next day, when my husband returned, I immediately confronted him. Although I knew it was better to collect evidence calmly if we were going to divorce, I couldn't pretend to be fine. What is this about? When I showed him the photo, my husband was surprised at first. But then he quickly regained his composure and became defiant. Ah, I see. You knew. Well, it can't be helped. As you can see. Honestly, I was surprised because I expected him to make some excuse. The woman is the daughter of the department head. The department head is guaranteed a higher position in the future. I guess you understand from this? To put it bluntly, marrying this woman benefits me. She's younger and prettier than you. My husband looked at me as if I was stupid. I thought about apologizing and crying, considering our son Steve. So I had thought not to divorce him. However, how could I with his attitude like this? He showed no remorse for his affair. Instead, he blatantly compared me with his affair partner and said she was better. As I remained silent, my husband became even more emboldened. Well, that's the situation. I think I'll divorce you. It's a bit earlier than planned. But I was going to tell you eventually, so this is just the right time. And so, we got divorced. After being told so much, I couldn't say I didn't want to divorce him. It was better for my mental health to get a divorce quickly, get compensation, and end things. My husband paid the compensation at my asking price and transferred almost all his property to me. Naturally, I gained custody of Steve. For my husband, who was planning to marry the department head's daughter, giving away some money was probably nothing to him. In fact, when he was leaving the house, he left me with these last words. Well, do your best living in poverty. Raising a child by yourself, you'll never be wealthy. Unlike you, I'm joining the celebrities. The department head's family is rich, after all. We'll probably never meet again, but struggle at the bottom. It's unbelievable that he could say such things, even though he has his own blood-related child. I felt relieved deep down to be divorcing such a man. Mentally I felt better, but everyday life was still tough. Even though I received compensation and property, I didn't have much savings, so I needed to work hard from now on. Living on just a part-time job was not possible. Eventually, I quit my part-time job and started working full-time. I felt sorry for Steve, but after elementary school, he had to go to after-school care by himself. Unintentionally, I ended up working full-time, and both my body and mind suddenly became very strained. The new job was unfamiliar, and I had to do all the housework by myself when I got home. Life changed completely from before, and the days passed by in a blur as I was too busy. Before I realized it, 7 years had passed since my divorce. But no matter how busy you are, humans adapt. Steve has become a middle schooler and can mostly take care of himself now. Because I've been busy, He has grown up to be quite a solid young man compared to other boys his age. He even cooks and does the laundry. Thanks to him, I've been freed from both housework and parenting. And for the past few years, I've had time for myself. Both my personal and professional lives are going very well. Now I can say it clearly, it was definitely good that I divorced such a man. If I had continued to be married to that awful man, I would never have achieved this life. However, one day while shopping at the local mall with my son, I ran into that awful person, my ex-husband, Michael. I hadn't noticed him, but he approached me. "Hey, isn't that you, Kim? Long time no see. You've aged quite a bit. Is that something you say when you meet someone after a long time? No person with normal sensibilities would ever tell a woman she has aged." That comment alone showed me that my ex-husband hasn't grown at all as a person. I became irritated within seconds and responded tersely. "What? You look pretty old yourself. I barely recognized you." Honestly, my ex-husband really had aged quite a bit. I hadn't seen him in 7 years, but it seemed like he had aged twice that much. His hair was thinning, and he had a pot belly, a complete middle-aged look. Talking to my ex-husband felt like a waste of time, so I said, well, long time no see. But you don't really need anything from me, right? So, see you around, and tried to walk away. But it wasn't going to be that easy. My ex-husband blocked my path and started spouting nonsense. "Hey, don't be so cold. We're finally all together. Let's catch up a bit." I really didn't want to hear anything about my ex-husband's current situation. The only thing I would want to say is about the child support payments. He stopped making a few years after the divorce. Child support isn't my right, it's Steve's right. Yet, there he was, daring to talk in front of Steve. But my ex-husband didn't care about my mood at all. He started rambling about his own life, which I had no interest in hearing. I remarried after that. To the daughter of the department head in that photo. Oh, he's not just a department head now, but a managing director. And thanks to that, I've been promoted to department head myself. I'm definitely on the winning side now. Honestly, no matter how much my ex-husband has climbed the corporate ladder, it doesn't affect me, and I'm not envious. All I thought was, so what? I was even more annoyed that he climbed the ladder yet didn't pay child support. It's truly stingy of a winner not to pay a few hundreds of dollars per month. My ex-husband continued to boast, ruffling my feelings even more. It really was the right decision to divorce you. You and your son are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year, you know. Ultimately, my ex-husband just wanted to boast about himself. That's proof enough since he didn't even try to ask about our lives. Normally, a parent would be interested in their son's life, but here he was. Not even speaking to Steve, who was right in front of him. Truly an awful father. Right. I should introduce you to my current wife. Hey. My ex-husband called out to a woman looking at clothes nearby. The woman came over to us, and I immediately knew who she was. I had seen her in a photo once. Yes. She was my ex-husband's new wife. This is Julia, my current wife. How about that? She's way more beautiful than you were, right? He introduced his new wife to me. What was he thinking? This woman was the one who stole my husband while we were married. I'm glad we're divorced now, but it was a shock back then, and I harbored resentment. There's no way I could have a good impression of this woman. Even a dimwit like my ex-husband should understand that much. But he must really look down on us. It seems he can't even comprehend such basic things. Ah, is that so? Are we done here? I'm not free, you know. Bye then. I said my goodbyes with an extremely displeased feeling. Of course, I didn't even glance at the woman, much less greet her. Wait a minute. As I tried to leave, my ex-husband blocked my path again. Stop it. There's no point in hearing about your family. Hey. Are you jealous because we seem happy? Don't let your poverty twist your heart too. You'll only become more miserable. My ex-husband assumed I was unhappy. It's none of your business. I'm perfectly happy, so leave me alone. The biggest misfortune recently was you talking to me. Even though I said I was happy. My ex-husband didn't believe me and pitted my situation anyway. Well, happiness varies from person to person, but poverty isn't happy, right? Don't strain yourself. If a single, divorced mother with a child were happy, there would be no unhappy people. With that background, remarriage is impossible for you. I'm just worried as your ex-husband, you know? While saying this, the expression on my ex-husband's face was the exact opposite of concerned. He was completely mocking me. When I looked at his wife next to him, she had a smug, mocking smile as well. I could never be friends with this woman. She's the worst kind, getting pleasure from looking down on others. Right? I told you. You're much better than her. Be confident. My ex-husband was flattering his current wife, comparing her to me and praising her to the skies. Well, she did help him climb the career ladder. So he's probably buttering her up whenever he can. Truly the worst kind of man. You're really the lowest of the low. I can't believe you were married to her. His wife mocked me despite meeting me for the first time. That's the worst kind of behavior in a person. I wanted to leave because I felt like I might respond if I stayed any longer. But my ex-husband stood in my way, so I couldn't move. Just so you know, we're still in love. So there's zero chance of getting back together with you. Don't get any weird hopes. My ex-husband was under some ridiculous delusion. To think he believed I had lingering feelings after he caused our divorce with his cheating. And 7 years later, he still thought so. His head was too full of fantasies, and I was speechless. As I was speechless at my ex-husband's ridiculous fantasy, he seemed to think he was right. Hey. Shocked into silence? It's tough being a man in demand. With his thoroughly middle-aged appearance, what part of him was in demand? I was beyond angry, I felt sick. As I stayed silent, my ex-husband was about to say something more. But then, Steve spoke up. Mom, why don't we fire this old man? What? My ex-husband was so baffled by what Steve said. Steve seemed quite angry, calling his own father this old man. Well, that's perfectly fine by me. What do you mean, fire me? Do you understand what being fired means? I'm not someone your mom can just fire, you know? You're in middle school, right? You should study properly. My ex-husband even spoke condescendingly to Steve. It's one thing to mock me, but it's unforgivable to insult my beloved son. Just as my anger toward my ex-husband was about to explode, I heard someone calling me. Hey, what's going on here? A man approached as he called out, and my ex-husband's face froze. Why are you here? Mr. President. My ex-husband questioned the man in front of him. Why shouldn't I be here? I'm just shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here? No, I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. I was just wondering why you, the president, were talking to my ex-wife. Ah, that makes sense. She's my wife now, after all. What? She's the president's wife. I can't believe it. Actually, I had remarried the president of the company, where my ex-husband works, about 3 years after I was widowed. I became close to the president shortly after my divorce when he approached me while I was shopping at a supermarket. I had worked at the same company as my ex-husband, so I knew the president. My ex-husband had an affair with the department head's daughter, which led to our divorce, and then he married her. The president was well aware of this and, as a man, he seemed quite displeased by it. However, he felt he couldn't interfere with an employee's private affairs. That's when he spotted me at the supermarket and couldn't resist saying hello. I was surprised that the president remembered me, a mere former employee, by face and name, as I had been a receptionist at the company, which might have made it easier for him to remember. It seems your marriage didn't go well, but I'm sure you'll find someone much better soon. Mr. President, I'm glad you remember me. But you don't have to worry about me, I'm doing fine. At the time, I had been divorced for less than a year and was still putting on a brave face. However, the president, with his extensive life experience, saw right through my facade and offered kind words. They say divorce takes 3 times the effort of marriage. No matter how smoothly the divorce goes, it's exhausting. I haven't divorced, but when my wife passed away, I barely felt like doing anything. It's tough when a couple who once loved each other parts ways. So, there's no need to pretend you're not hurting. The president knew the loneliness that comes with the end of a marriage. Indeed, while I felt it was better to have split, I was also feeling a mix of loneliness and emptiness at the time. So his words really resonated with me. Talking about it might ease your mind. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'll always treat you to a meal. He said this and gave me his business card. I felt it was too forward to contact him for about 2 years, but as time passed, I found myself wanting to talk to someone again. Finally, I decided to reach out to the president. Despite his busy schedule, the president made time for me and treated me to a meal. When I was an employee, he was still a department head and seemed unapproachable. But having a meal with him revealed he was a genuinely nice man. Perhaps it was easier because I was no longer with the company. But soon the president and I became good drinking buddies. About a year later, he proposed to me with a serious look on his face. You're joking, right, Chris? Don't say things like that even as a joke. I thought it was a joke since he mentioned it while we were drinking. But the president was serious. At first, I just wanted to cheer you up after your divorce. But being with you really settles me. I haven't felt this way about anyone since my wife passed away. Honestly, you've been healing me. If you're willing, I'd like to spend the rest of my life with you. Please give me a day to think about it, I said and consulted my son. I don't mind. It's up to you, Mom. Decide based on whether you like him or not. Since there was no opposition, I decided to marry the president. To be honest, I liked him. I thought of him as a drinking buddy, but I also felt healed when I was with him. We healed each other, so there was no reason not to live together. And listening to him talk about his late wife, it was clear how much he had loved her. Every time I heard his stories, I felt fortunate to be marrying someone who could love me as he did. I even felt a bit jealous of his wife. Thus, we became husband and wife. The president treats my son as if he were his own. He had no children with his previous wife, But they get along so well that they seem like a real father and son. I am truly as happy now as I told my ex-husband I was. My ex-husband turned pale and trembled when he heard I had married the president. He probably never imagined that his ex-wife, whom he looked down upon as poor, would be married to the president. Dad, this man was mocking Mom. Fire him. Steve ruthlessly told on my ex-husband to the president. You fool. No, Steve. What are you talking about? We were just catching up. My ex-husband tried to cover it up, but it was obvious to the president. You tend to look down on others, even at the company. I think what Steve is saying is true. I've heard various bad things about you from your subordinates. I think it's time for an internal investigation, so be prepared. My ex-husband never expected that Steve's words would be taken seriously by the president, leading to an investigation into his misconduct at the company. He apologized. I'm sorry. I may have been a bit harsh to your wife. I apologize. Can you please hold off on the internal investigation? Despite the crowded shopping mall, he apologized, clearly desperate to avoid the investigation. However, this act was practically an admission of his wrongdoing. The president was not swayed. No, I'll proceed with it regardless. By the way, the executive director you are close to has also been receiving bad reviews. I'll thoroughly investigate both of you. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband's wife also apologized. Please, not him. Just this man is fine, but leave my father out of this. Hearing her words, my ex-husband immediately began to argue with her. What are you saying? Are you abandoning me? Don't mess with me. There are plenty of men like you. Of course, my father is more important. Their marital spat was indeed disgraceful. And we didn't want to be associated with such behavior. So we ignored the arguing couple and left the store. That selfish couple probably wouldn't last long after this. They had it coming. The president quickly organized a team the next day to thoroughly investigate the conduct of my ex-husband and the executive director. The findings were damning: harassment and verbal abuse toward subordinates, favoritism in personnel decisions, and demands for entertainments from business partners using their positions of power. These abuses had been ongoing for years. Using one's position to solicit personal gains was unacceptable, especially in today's age. As a result, both my ex-husband and the executive director were stripped of their positions and reassigned to regional branches. Probably, my ex-husband knew this would happen, which is why he had apologized in the shopping mall. He was aware of his misconduct. Knowing yet continuing such behavior made it even more reprehensible. His career was likely over. According to the president, both eventually resigned from the company, likely fearing retaliation from the employees they had harassed. They chose to leave. However, their troubles didn't end with their resignations. They were sued by the employees they had mistreated. Disliked by most, their numerous abusive acts were well documented, and they lost the lawsuit, facing substantial damages. The financial ruin drove my ex-husband's wife to blame him, worsening their marital relationship, which soon ended in divorce. The frequent fights and his abusive behavior might even lead to another lawsuit from his wife for damages. Watching my ex-husband's downfall reinforced my belief in living a straightforward and honest life. Meanwhile, I was blessed with a child with the president. At 42, it was a high-risk pregnancy, but our baby was born healthy, bringing immense joy. Steve was thrilled to be a big brother, lovingly taking part in caring for the baby every day. We even talk about Steve joining the company in the future. Despite the challenges of parenting at our age, seeing our baby's sleeping face makes all worries vanish. I'm grateful for this new life and ready to face tomorrow with resolve.